Last week, I was away in the wonderful nation of Croatia, specifically the incredible city of Split. I took in the sights, relaxed by the pool and on the beach, and ate copious amounts of ice cream. It was an incredibly relaxing break and time away from my desk well spent. Yet despite being on holiday and not supposed to be thinking about work, I couldn't help but keep an ear out for the names, words and languages I was hearing. Of course, the language I heard the most of in Croatia was none other than Croatian. This tongue has over 5 million speakers and is found in the Slavic branch of the wider Indo-European language family. When you first hear Croatian, it may sound very unique, almost like a mixture of Romance and Slavic tongues. In reality, however, it isn't actually all that unique. Many argue that Croatian is not a tongue exclusive to this nation, but is actually the same language that is spoken in the neighbouring nation of Serbia, as well as Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Kosovo too, I guess, depending on your view on that country. But yeah, this video is all about the languages spoken in these nations too. It was just easier to only mention Croatia and Serbia in the title to save on letter count, and seemingly a lot of this debate focuses on just these two nations. The four languages that these 4/5 countries speak, Croatian, Serbian, Montenegrin and Bosnian, are actually all kind of the exact same language, a tongue that has the incredibly simple name of Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Serbian. Thankfully, it's often shortened to just BCMS, or even just Serbo-Croatian. For this video, I'm going to be calling it BCMS, as it's way shorter than the full name, and unlike Serbo-Croatian, doesn't leave anyone out. With all that in mind, BCMS is a really interesting language. It has 18 million speakers, and should more correctly be referred to as a pluricentric language. This is a fancy term for a language that is used across multiple places but in different forms that make it slightly different. Other pluricentric languages include the likes of Arabic and its many different forms across the world, the various forms of Chinese spoken in China, and even English can be considered pluricentric due to how much it has changed in different parts of the world, like American English and Australian English. Honestly, a huge chunk of the world's tongues can be considered pluricentric, especially if they have found homes in new places. What this all means is that BCMS is at the same time a singular language, but also not a singular language. Honestly, it's really confusing, and even actual linguists are still debating what exactly it is. What we can be somewhat sure about is that BCMS, as well as Slavic languages as a whole, do not have their ultimate origins on this part of the world where we find modern Croatia, Serbia and co. Collectively, this region is referred to as the Balkans. Proto-Slavic, the tongue which would go on to become all the Slavic languages we have today, had its origins somewhere around Eastern Europe around 3,000 years ago. Where exactly it originated from, we don't seem to be too sure. Eventually, Slavic speakers would migrate south and arrive in the Balkans in the 6th and 7th century AD. These Slavic tongues that found themselves in the Balkans would eventually become the South Slavic branch of Slavic. This includes BCMS, but also other Slavic tongues like Bulgarian and Macedonian. These two tongues are South Slavic, but not part of BCMS. Hence why it's not called BCMS-BM or something. From the time BCMS emerged in this neck of the woods, different versions/dialects of it would emerge too. People using slightly different terms and words in different areas it was spoken over. This makes sense. The region of the Balkans BCMS was spoken over in the past was vast, so it's understandable why they wouldn't all speak the same way. Even today, a language like English in the UK is spoken in different parts of the country. What this meant is that BCMS needed a standardized version of itself, and eventually that emerged under the name Shtokavian. This is something known as a prestige supra-dialect of BCMS, which basically means it's seen as the correct, proper way of speaking the languages, rid of any dialectal colloquialisms. The former part of its name comes from an old word forming element meaning what, so the name kind of means the what language. Why it's called this, I have no idea, but I imagine it'll make Stone Cold Steve Austin happy. This language was going through all kinds of changes, but while the tongue was shifting, so was the geopolitics of the Balkans too. Various powers have laid claims to the Balkans across history. Since Slavic speakers arrived in the 6th and 7th century, powers that have called parts of the Balkans home include the Byzantines, the Ottomans, and even the Austro-Hungarian Empire. After the First World War, however, many of these Slavic-speaking areas in the Balkans were brought together in 1918 and became the singular nation of Yugoslavia. This country's name fittingly means the land of the South Slavs, as it was they who made up the land. This country was composed of the modern nations of Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, and of course Kosovo too, depending on your thoughts on that nation. Now as a singular nation, Yugoslavia needed a singular language, and unsurprisingly it was BCMS which was selected as the country's official tongue, even though it was still being spoken differently in different parts of Yugoslavia, while the aforementioned Shtokavian form of the language was being used as a lingua franca of the land, to allow everyone to easily talk to one another. Of course, if you look at a modern map, you won't find Yugoslavia. The country broke apart in 1992 along with the fall of the USSR. This led to the creation of those aforementioned countries of Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, and eventually Kosovo too. This means that all these countries are actually relatively young. Many watching this video are most likely older than places like Croatia or North Macedonia. Something we've seen throughout history is that when a piece of land gains independence, one thing they strive for is a unique national identity for themselves to help them stick out to the wider world and the country they are gaining independence from. A key way of doing this is via language. North Macedonia had no issue with managing this. Their language of Macedonian had been around for long enough and was different enough from what everyone else was speaking. The other nations, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo down the line meanwhile, were all still using different forms of BCMS. It was here that these countries decided to take BCMS, and more specifically that Shtakovian form of it, and each make their own changes to the language. Many of these changes would have been used anyway in their nooks of the world, but during this time they made them official. This resulted in the BCMS language splitting into those four quote-unquote tongues of Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, and Serbian like we have today. This formal split into these four languages only happened in the 1990s, which is incredibly recently. This is why that despite the fact there are differences in the languages, they aren't all that different to one another. Hence why many believe they are not unique languages, but just different versions of one bigger tongue. To some, calling Croatian and Serbian different languages is like calling British English and American English different languages. The four current BCMS languages all learn something called a dialect continuum, which means they have fairly high degrees of mutual intelligibility between one another. Though of course the tongues do have a fair share of differences. Each version of BCMS has gained different influences from other languages. This can be seen greatly in specific words used between Serbian and Croatian. Sometimes the changes aren't all that noticeable, like dolphin being dupin in Croatian and delfin in Serbian, while in other cases they can be completely different. Take the Croatian word for lawyer, odvjetnik. In Serbian meanwhile the term is advocat. We can clearly see the Serbian version of this word ties into the English advocate. This shows us the differences between the languages, but they are different in other ways too. One of the more unique ways in which they differ is the scripts they use. Croatian seemingly uses the Latin script exclusively, while the other three can be seen using the Latin script as well as the Cyrillic script heavily linked with other Slavic tongues. I imagine Croatians' use of the Latin script stems from their long ties to not only the Roman Empire, but also their ties to Catholicism, while the other three have deeper ties to the Slavic Orthodoxy denomination of Christianity. While these differences might seem small to many of us, it's these differences that allow each of these four versions of BCMS to be unique enough for many people to consider them to be wholly unique languages. And that unique identity is only compounded when these tongues are used as symbols of national pride and identity in their respective nations. Though it's undeniable all these languages sound similar to one another. So to answer the question in the title of this video, do Croatian and Serbian, as well as Montenegro, Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, speak the same language? Well, the only correct answer honestly is kind of yes and kind of no. Name Explained depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explained videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/NameExplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.